when the goddamn freaking Apple Corporation puts these things in your computer that you don't necessarily know about or care about. It's like sign into the iTunes store right now. No, no, cancel, go away. I don't want to listen to your Apple Music, and I can't even find the button that says no. I don't want to listen to your Apple Music. I have to like quit music. So it's when I plug in
Oh,
my earbuds, it brings up that, and of course, it's not like I use that every day and have it memorized. Oh yeah, it's gonna bring up my and so I'm sure there's a way you can go into your settings and change that. But at the end of this conversation, am I gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna diligently change the settings on my computer? No, I'm not. I'm gonna do that.
yeah.
I'm gonna like, I don't know, go eat some pretzels or something. They're wasting my life.
Oh man, we got the video on, and you were like, kind of getting some things together, and you're like, oh, and I was like, ooh, Darcy's in a good mood to record today. I was like, this
uh,
this will be interesting.
well, that was kind of interesting actually, because for the last bunch of days I've been kind of I don't know, lazy, not like down. I try not to use that word too much because it does have sort of a health connotation when you use the word down. It's like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm sort of just sort of blasé. And then also in that little moment there, it took a little bit of rage against the Apple Corporation to be like, "Woo! Now I'm full of energy. Fuck you." Oh,
Oh man.
Jesus. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Um, I feel the blah though.
The
Um,
blah.
I feel like because we've had this conversation, this project going, that I've wanted to continue, but then feeling like I can't, don't have time to like message you and do a short thing. And I was like, man, seriously, all it takes is just to like text and say, hey, let's do it, even if it's 10 minutes or half an hour. It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And then I was working with a client this morning, and I was sort of explaining this thing that I've been I've been thinking about, and I did a blog on it, and it was on the this this concept of a minimum barrier to entry.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Um, so like the minimal amount of exertion that would allow me to do something, but at least I would do it, contributing to a greater project. So if it's like, uh, I want to, I'm working on these. I'm trying to build some sound acoustic panels.
Okay, cool.
So I'm kind of,
Okay, so you got some frames and then you're gonna put some sort of foam or stuff inside them or
yeah, yeah.
cool.
And so instead of spending a whole bunch of money, Danielle was like, "Man, you can just do it yourself." So that's what I'm doing. Except
Awesome.
it's a bit of work.
Yeah.
Um, but I have a hard time getting those projects done or starting projects, and it's like that's the thing about my personality. I've got lots of ideas; they happen all the time, but I never execute. So what I've been doing, I don't know if you can see my finger. There's boards right there at the end of the finger, and during the day, I'll just go over and measure and mark what I need to cut. And like, if that's all I do today, then that's all I do today. But at least there's
Yeah.
forward progression. Minimum
Yeah.
barrier to entry.
Yeah, one little task. In fact, I'm really glad you texted when you did, um, because I was particularly disappointed with myself today.
Oh,
Yesterday, I gave myself permission to kind of do nothing. I was like, yeah, I'm reasonably busy. And I started doing more exercise lately. So I'm like, I got a few good things on the go. So, but then I'm like, oh yeah, Saturday. I got tons of time Saturday to do something,
mm-hmm.
anything. And I've done nothing so far. And it's almost like 4 o'clock. So I was like, oh, good. And in terms of videos, I really haven't shot many new videos. I have a bunch that I haven't published, but I think also I'm reconsidering what my subject material is going to be, and I think maybe that just takes a lot of time that isn't necessarily rational sit down time. You just have to let it breathe through your mind, and then eventually, the light clicks on or off. I'm like, oh yeah, go that route, or don't go that route.
Hmm.
Um, it's hard to get feedback on the internet when you're doing stuff. It's just hard to get anyone to watch anything. So you can put out a bunch of styles of videos, and then it's like, well, it's not getting much feedback. And you noticed the other day, like most of the people that watch the videos are actually bots,
Yeah.
and they even put comments on your video. You're like, thank you.
Hmm. What
So
do
it's
you
it.
are
Go
is
on.
one of your goals to get more viewers or to people to see this content?
Well, yeah, I think ideally, I would want people to watch it and engage with it. Um, and part of the difficulty that to really get there is to grab enough attention for something to start working. Um, I wonder, am I changing the way that I would present this if I already had a following of people that I knew I could trust and would have enough patience to hear what I'm saying? Or am I trying to make it really exciting and trying to rush the process a little bit and making it presented in such a way, and then it has to be fast? And it's like, and sometimes fast is good. If your points are really good and they're smart, fast can be interesting. But then I also crave or desire to want to slowly talk things through, and have an audience that trusts me enough. And some of the YouTubers that I really admire, they are they actually have that trust from their audience that they can slowly talk through something. They can have a total pause if they want to,
Hmm.
but you're there. You're waiting because they're, I guess they're part of what you call, I would call it smart tube.
Smart
Um,
tube.
Smart tube. Yeah, there's a group of YouTubers out there that they have very little in terms of um, editing, like some of it none. There's this one guy, he calls himself Beau of the Fifth Column,
Bow of the fifth
and
column. Okay.
Beau of the Fifth Column, and he's, I don't know, from Arkansas or something, somewhere in the South, and he just slowly talks through his subject matter, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes per video. It's just him in his workshop. He just he's it's just, let's talk about this for a few minutes, and then he has his little tagline at the end. It's like, well, it's just a thought. You all have a good night. And he is very smart guy. He's very well read, and so he's very good at picking through the latest sort of internety um, bullshit that's going around, especially when it's like an important subject matter,
Hmm.
and people start memeing around some obviously disgusting lie about something. For example, uh, one video where he did more than just talk. He did just one tiny little thing. But anyways, I'll get to the point. He was that guy in New Zealand. So that guy in New Zealand that like murdered a whole whack of people. And so he was like, okay, so let's talk about the people who are spreading a lie that this is all fake. It's all created in the studio. They're not real bullets. It's all just bullshit. And so he just slowly talks through what people getting shot actually looks like. And so he's like, well, I read this guy on Twitter said, yeah, if it was real, you'd see more blood. And he's like, no, no, the harsh truth of the matter is you don't see blood. And so the one thing he did, he said, see that back there on my wall? And he's actually, he's there was like a little hole. And he said, how big's that hole? And he takes his camera. It's just like a cell phone he uses. Just walks over there. He says, this hole is like this big, but the hole of those bullets right there. And he shows it. He said, you didn't see that from that far away. And it was just really powerful to just show a very simple thing of how people get an image of their mind, and then they spread this lie.
Hmm.
Guys instantaneously were spreading lies and conspiracy theories about that guy, saying, "Oh, it's all fake," and they were all actors, and man, it doesn't look like a Hollywood movie. When real bad things happen, they don't look like Hollywood movies at all.
Hmm.
And that was the point of his video, and it was just calmly talked through. Smart guy, and I would like my videos to be a lot like that.
Hmm.
And then sometimes I think, ah, maybe I'm just not as smart as he is.
I think that a lot because I would like to start doing music and as well kind of mental health stuff on the internet, but at the same time I'm like, okay, and as well like I don't want to say health and fitness because that is such a cliche thing, but I have continued to learn a lot about nutrition and longevity. But anyways, um, a lot of the people that I listen to, it's like I feel as though I should start making content about the stuff that I'm interested in, and see where it takes me. And
Yeah,
but I look at the people who I admire, and I'm just like, man, they just are so brilliant and so smart. And they, like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing lately is reading or listening to people who read, listening to a lot of people on podcasts and YouTube who will start quoting research papers, and then they'll start talking about this chemical that happens in the brain and blah blah blah. And I'm like, see, I should be talking about that, but at the same time, I haven't read the papers, I haven't done that work, and so I'm like, maybe I'm just not, maybe not that smart yet. I don't know if
yeah.
intelligence. I know there's different domains of intelligence, but
Well, I think that's an excellent point. Um, so I struggle with that at times of like, well, what am I actually an expert at when I'm trying to express anything in a public forum? Um, and I guess it sort of comes down to what do you spend most of your time doing? And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are don't know they're experts at certain things. It's like this is the content that you consume. Some
mm-hmm.
of it's not in book form, and I think sometimes I'll think that all the time about myself. Like, I'm not reading enough. I'm not reading enough. But it's like, yeah, but I read a lot of articles.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch a lot of videos, and a lot of those videos are from the people that you're talking about. People that are, oh well, it's not that much difference if I'm listening to someone on a podcast rather than reading their book.
Hmm.
um, or like some people's books, um, listening to it read. It's like, well, I guess that's reading their book.
Hmm.
um, Although maybe there is something slightly different um, about the reading process itself. It requires a different layer of attention and effort to digest the material.
Maybe,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Like
I
you're,
think it just comes from a variety of consumption of any particular topic.
yeah, like you speak on 1% of what you actually know and absorb, and then you're like, oh, I know that 1% of what that person knows at least, and it's like I feel like that gives me some kind of power, but it's actually I only know a little small chunk of what they know, and what they know is like they're reading tons of papers, maybe even a day, and they're doing all this stuff. But
Yeah.
um,
Well, are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's easy in our world right now to get a fairly significant chunk of information about any topic and
Hmm.
feel like it's extremely powerful amount of information, um, because no everyone sort of just kind of lost the idea of what an expert actually does
Mm.
and what they actually know. And they've had many times to go back and challenge those original thoughts. So if I were like truly honest with myself, um, performance is what I'm actually an expert at.
Hmm.
And it's one of those things that it doesn't have a lot of the standard academic type of credentials or lists. I've just done that my whole life, um, whether it be acting for stage or camera, which is more of an artistic sense, but also in doing medical simulations, and improv. So it's all just like me feeling and experiencing um, something fictional, but as real as possible. And so that's something hard to express. I'm an expert at being in someone else's shoes. That's really what I'm an expert at.
You're an expert at empathy.
You could say it that way, and yeah, and it actually is. It's actually kind of painful when I do put it together and go, yeah, I think that is one of the things I'm an expert at. So
Hmm.
it's very difficult for me, um, to get along in the world because I do see the different points of view, and it's understandable to me why people feel the way that they feel. And I find it really frustrating that there's so much bitterness and division amongst people, um, for no reason.
Hmm.
Uh, there seems to be no end goal to this process of arguing about certain things and not understanding that the way that you frame an argument is there's one thing there's you frame a certain argument that appeals to the people that already sort of kind of agree with you, and people love that and they get attention for that. But the real argument you need to work on is changing the way that you phrase all of that, because it means something entirely different to the ears on the other side of the argument. They
Hmm.
hear something completely different.
Yeah.
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 And so I find that really difficult of like, there's groups of people who are like always like, be careful with your words. Be super careful which words you choose. And then when they criticize their opposition, they're less careful about their words. And it's like, hey, maybe you should practice what you preach.
Hmm. Well,
Because go on.
there's this concept that we should pay attention and acknowledge the things that seem to like really draw our interest in. Like if we might be doing our regular daily activities, and then for some reason we're really drawn to. In this case, what I'm trying to analyze is your desire to join the Conservative Party. Was that right?
Um, I might do that. I,
Yeah,
I haven't
or
I
just like
haven't renewed my NDP membership in a while.
okay. Well, even if it was just like a thought you had and it's just kind of brewing in the back of your mind and then it keeps building, maybe it has nothing to do with the that the act of that, but the contents of what that represents, which is exactly what you're talking about right now, is trying to change the way it's like it is so frustrating um, to see that opposing sort of conversation where people are appealing to a certain crowd, a certain people, and then telling people that they should be sensitive with their words, and then how they frame an argument or frame a proposition affects the way that other people see that event or that idea or that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And think of it this way, in a maybe a selfish point of view of helping your own team. Let's say it's a team thing that rather than being all up in arms because it's goddamn political correctness, I can't use these words. Well, why don't you see it just from a slightly different point of view of if you use those words less often and you use them in particular circumstances and they don't offend people, then those people are more likely to come closer to your point of view on other things. If you make people angry and pissed off, it actually lessens your point. And so I see it on both sides of these sort of cultural issues that seem to overwhelm the conversation sometimes, and disappointingly so, because I think the cultural issues are kind of not real. We make them real through this gigantic megaphone of the internet. And none of these issues we talk about are actually really even happening in any particular way. So I brought up one of the examples, political correctness. I don't think that's actually really happening in any significant manner in any place. There
hmm.
are examples, of course. There you can always find a couple of odd stories here and there of, oh yeah, someone got in trouble because they used a certain phrase or da da da. But then when you dig in deeper, you find out, yeah, actually, there's a lot more to that particular story. But all we get is the tweet-sized version of the story, and it has different layers that have actually nothing to do with political correctness. And of course, to take it from a factual point of view, political correctness has nothing to do with being social. It's not a social term. It was actually invented as a political term, hence why they use the word political correctness. And political correctness was essentially, here are the mandated things by the government in control that you can and cannot talk about. It was a very structured thing. So in terms of, fascism, fascism had political correctness. Tyrannical communism had political correctness. There are certain ways you can talk about the government and certain ways that you can't. And so you take that to our, 2020, and it's like, you can't say certain words in public. And it's like, nah, that's kind of nothing to do with public. It has to do with tyrannical power is what it really has to do. But I went on a sidebar there, anyways, about just as a historical fact, and maybe that's a mistake that I make often is to try and talk about historical facts because now it no longer applies. There are more people out there that have the new definition of political correctness in their mind, that the old political correctness is now gone. And we have
Well,
to now reinvent a term for what they did in the 1930s.
yeah, you know what though? I think even though it may not be something that a lot of people do, you're talking about historical facts. I think that's important. And, we were talking about knowing history and knowing the evolution of where things came from. I think if people knew more about that, it would like it would help. But again, you know, there's the whole aspect of like, okay, we have certain ideas of how the world should be. Like Like, for example, man, I wish that I myself, but also other people, knew more about the history of certain ideas.
Mhm.
And I also wish, maybe that's a bad example. I also wish that people were able to have more empathy so that they could see what other political ideas are like, or other thoughts, other ideas of different personalities are like you. But at the same time, it's like that's a personality trait, and is it my right to change people, or is I don't think it's even possible to change the world. The world, maybe. Sorry, I'm going down some
No, that's
tangents, but
you're making an excellent point as whether or not all of the conversations leads to anything. Whether or not it is true that a small group of individuals can change the world, which was a famous phrase that Margaret Mead had said that a small group of individuals, only a small group of individuals has ever changed the world. She said it much more eloquently than I did. But we I wonder if it has an overall effect, and we're talking about just like my, my little tiny voice over here and a little tiny voice over there and little tiny voices all over the place that build up to an eventual path forward, and what we hope would be progress. And I can't remember who said it, but they said something along the lines of history will always bend towards progress. So it was kind of the idea of like, no matter how weird or tense things may seem to be in the present moment, as we go forward, there's always a bend towards justice. That was the word they used. A bend towards justice. So it might have wiggles along the way where it's like, it's being bent back to a place of injustice. And hopefully, yeah, it's more of like an optimistic view that humans will always slowly bend in that direction. That doesn't mean there's going to be massive miscalculations or misinterpretations, because I think I've talked about this before, of that I believe that people feel they're doing the right thing.
right.
They just don't see the, I hate to use words like evil, but they don't see how somehow their brain made a wrong calculation about something, and they can't be convinced that they're wrong. They've decided they're right, and they're going forward, and they're going to make massive decisions based on that assumption that they are correct, and then human tragedies occur as a result of it.
Yeah. Well, that's. I was thinking about a comparison in a biblical sense, because the Bible sort of teaches that men are naturally, like, they miss the mark. That's what it means to sin,
Hmm.
is to miss the mark. I think in archery. Um, but it's like our natural being makes mistakes constantly. We're just constantly riddled with mistakes. Um, and then the Bible teaches more about being redemptive, which is truth. Um, Submitting to Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life. Um, but I was just in response to, some people have a hard time. Well, especially narcissists, I suppose. But some people have a hard time accepting or knowing or finding or looking for faults where they need to be corrected. I think that's where I was going with that.
Okay.
Um, and the blind spots of a person, like knowing or thinking, believing that you're doing what is correct, um, and going full force towards that thing that you feel is correct, and then totally ignoring something else that's in your blind spot that isn't uh, that's really contradictory or has a great detrimental impact or whatever it might be. And that's so hard. And I don't think anyone, like nobody's perfect, I guess. Um, anyways, that's why I really like the notion of being humble. It's realizing like
Yep.
I think I'm going in the right direction, but I'm also willing to be wrong. Um, yeah.
It's in short supply. And um, the most difficult barrier that I'm seeing right now is the erosion of that exact idea of people being willing to be wrong, to be willing to change their point of view given new evidence,
Hmm.
to be willing even just to assume that when people are conversing and sharing ideas, that they're not necessarily ideologically committed to what they are saying in that exact moment. And so I think Joe Rogan's a great example of that. He's just talking and he's just trying to keep a decent conversation going with a wide spectrum of guests. And his skill is to keep a conversation going and keep it interesting. That's what he's doing. Yet he'll pop something out of his mouth and it's grabbable and clippable and twitterable. It's under 2 minute clip. And all of a sudden, Joe Rogan's a racist. And it's like, well, he was just, conversing with the guest that he's with and trying to come a little bit closer to the way that they're talking about a subject to make them keep talking.
Hmm.
Now, there's a bunch of things I could be very finely critical about about Joe Rogan, but I'm not because I know what he's actually doing. He's just being a guest of the show.
Hmm.
That's what a host. He's being a host of the show, and this idea that we have to grab on to these micro moments and all of our heads explode. But you see how it's an incentive problem. There's something to be gained by being the person who can call you out. You've got the call out culture. The person doing the call also gets the attention because that is what is the most difficult in our society right now with everyone speaking all at the same time. Who gets the attention? And so if you can play along with this call out culture, you might get some attention. Um,
Ah, man, that's
yeah,
so rough. Because, the hope would be that truth prevails. The hope would be that honesty and moral effort and forward, sort of good intentions. Maybe I shouldn't use that word, but moral effort is what should prevail. But then again, I guess prevail in what sense? You get attention. What does that mean? Maybe you get monetary or financial gain. And again, what does that give you? Is maybe it doesn't give you a moral outcome. Maybe receiving a whole tons of money because you have all this attention isn't a moral outcome. So a moral shot at a target will give you a moral outcome for what you desire. So um,
well, if you think of it this way, never before in human history have there been such a large portion of the modern world who can make a living by tweeting and or Instagramming, Facebooking, television, radio, movies, podcasts, guy on the internet, stuff, just noise. It's all put it all beyond the little framework of here is like artistic expression has grown to like this gigantic ball over time of media. There's all this noise of all sorts. It includes video games and all of the associated products. It's this massive thing. And there are so many North Americans in particular involved in this massive thing. You know, it's my career is very much part of this gigantic media thing. And so these media bubbles are created because this is market share. You know, you want to keep those people, and this machine is based on ideas. To bring it back to, you know, Bo of the fifth column, you know, there's that bubble. He's got that bubble right now. So if I think, yeah, gee, I really want a show that is very much like his, but then you know what? Bo does that show and he does it very well. There's no way that I could ever be Bo. Bo is Bo. And he's got a great little show, and I think he's an excellent YouTuber. Um, but is there room for another? Well, there's going to be thousands that try every day, and this big ball of noise just keeps getting louder and louder. Um,
Mm.
I don't know where it ends. I really don't know how or where it ends, or if people just start dropping out of this system of, sometimes I'll refer to it as a digital tyranny.
Mm.
We are all enslaved to this click system. Someone, I think it was Mark Blythe who said it, that what the world is going in this direction. He was talking about, you know, aftermath of COVID-19, that all of these small businesses are likely to go bankrupt over time, and all we're left with these giant big box stores and the Amazons, and you're either someone who's clicking to order, or you're someone who's in their Amazon warehouse, taking orders from the digital managers and the digital tyranny that he called it. I'm like, oh God, that is very dystopian. That like are essentially our lives are surrounded by all these devices that are going to tell us exactly what you need to do moment to moment to moment, and you can see it on anyone's cell phone. I'm not a person who puts my schedule on my phone. I'm like, no, it's on a piece of paper. It's like, yeah, I don't want, I don't want that feeling,
Well,
you
they
know.
they say that conscientious people are have less negative emotions. So part of conscientiousness is like being very organized and scheduled and things like that. So maybe we're leaning in that direction because we can see that it helps us, and we're like scheduling everything's scheduled by our phones and blah blah blah. And it's like at a certain point it'll backfire because everything does with in excess. But um, maybe we like it. Maybe we like the scheduling because it gives us some certainty and some amount of comfort.
Well, I think it rewards the people that are best suited for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's been one of the problems of the past, let's call it 60-ish years, in particular the last 40 years, where we've gone to this stage of hyper efficient capitalism, and you need to fit one of these machines, and you need to be one of these high achieving cogs in the wheel that does constantly produce, and it rewards those people who fit well into that system. I think it was one writer I remember talking about, it's the coffee world. You know, that we live in a coffee world, caffeine just being this, like we're always going, you know, it's like wake up 6 a.m., do life, fix things, raising children, go to work, fucking do this, do that. Yeah, 11 o'clock, bed, up at 6, boom. It's like, it's the coffee world. And it was a really interesting article. So it pops out in my mind of, um, but that's not everyone. That, that is a certain chunk of people. And then there's a bunch of people who just have no choice. You'd better go along with this, or you don't get to have rent. You don't get to have food.
Yeah.
So if you want to be well adjusted to a society that you're not well adjusted to, what of those people? It's as if we've really sort of that um, lifestyle has become the dominant lifestyle without having to be sold, because it's based on your productivity and your time.
Well,
And
do you
it's not
think?
necessarily you get fully rewarded for it either. There's some people who work their ass off and they don't really make any money.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, the greatest, I think the two greatest factors for people who are successful financially, or probably otherwise too, I suppose, are people who are smart and hardworking. And I was I
There's
was
some evidence to that.
I was wondering if maybe what's happening is that we're stuck in this place where for the longest time in history of the world it was survival mode. We need to survive. So that's our genetics bred the people who survived were the people who uh, worked hard and were able to capture animals or throw things at them or whatever. So intelligence. And then now it's like, well, we've raised our, like, I going back to one of the previous videos that we did, it's like we should be able to share as a collective humanity on the dividends of our success, our technological success. But we're still stuck in this phase where the people who are most dominant in terms of personality, which are very people who are very low in agreeableness, hardworking, but they don't accept other people's ideas, and they don't have, maybe it's, I don't know if I want to say they don't have empathy, but they go more towards what's functional and reasonable rather than emotional and seeing things from another person's perspective, I suppose. Maybe I'm getting off in the gray end, on the deep end now,
No,
but um,
no, I don't think you're getting off in the gray zone or the
all
deep
right.
end.
Well, at a certain point when I start going on a ramble, I have like 80% that seems to be, I'm like, I got it. And then the last 20%, I seem to go off into this weird stuff. So maybe you can help tie in what I was
All
trying to
right.
say.
Um, well, I think maybe you sidestepped choosing an assertive word, because as you were going along, I was like, okay, well, maybe what he's trying to say is we're rewarding people who have the ability to be ruthless. We're rewarding the people who are willing to be shameless, who are willing to be greedy, who are willing to disregard the needs of others. And if you compare it to what you're saying about survival, and we are wrongly going on the idea that we got here via survival of the fittest individual. And there's a huge mistake that I think we've made along the way, because that's obviously not true. If you take a naked human being and throw them in the savannah, they're fucking dead. They're dead. You're just dead, 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 dead a billion times. A naked human being, like, oh my God, we're the most vulnerable bag of crap compared to like a lion. Oh my God, they tear the shit out of us. A pack of lions? Oh my God, it's hilarious.
Hmm.
So it's obviously true that we got here via cooperation. And
Hmm.
so what I think has happened is this idea of the fittest is one idea, and it's also the individual is the other important idea that we've sort of really ran with so far. that this idea of being the fittest individual that's ruthless no longer needs the people that support that activity. It's like, I'm the guy who goes out and makes the money. So it's all mine. It's all mine. Disregarding the fact that, motherhood is one of the most difficult jobs on the planet and the lowest paid job on the planet. You go, wow. But, perhaps back in survival day, the dude that went out and killed the animals also realized, yeah, it's painful doing this job, and I'm going to get old, and I need to have sons to fucking protect me from getting torn up by a lion when I can't do this anymore. We're a family, and we're a group, we're a tribe, and that all of these people do serve a function to this thing. But then as time goes on, we just no longer see, the group. And it's like, well, I can be in a ruthless manner on Wall Street, and I don't see the effects of any of my actions. And when you said, the smartest and the hardest working, I agree with that sometimes. But then I think, well, there's a lot of jobs where they work very hard at doing something that hurts a lot of people, but it helps themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. So one of the most unfortunate things, and this is why I said the last 60 years, the last 40 years in particular, is many of the smartest people in North America were on fast track to Wall Street rather than becoming scientists, teachers, professors, whatever else. List whatever you like. They just fast tracked into the extraction economy. They're going to become smarter and smarter at finding ways of extracting more and more pennies from billions and billions of transactions. And then it's like, well, what have you added? What have you added? You figured out a way to steal a penny from 4 billion transactions every day. It's going to make you rich. But you actually haven't added anything at all. You just stole a penny from everyone. It's brilliant. It's actually like, seriously, technically brilliant when you dig into it. Like, wow, that's crazy smart that you figure out how to do that. But you didn't add anything to the world.
Well, dude, that's why I feel like you should check out Gary Vaynerchuk, because he's an entrepreneur, but I really think you would agree with his values.
Who?
Speaking of value, he says, the biggest thing, he's not for uh, like the hardest working to make the most money. He is into working hard, but working hard at something you love that you can't tear yourself away from because you're so engaged with. And he says the way to run a business essentially is not the end goal is not to gain profit. Gain profit, that's the outcome of running a business. The purpose of running a business is to add value. And so what you're saying, one of the side things that you mentioned that I want to put on is like, we need teachers, we need professors, we need garbage men, we need all these different people, and because they're adding value to our culture and to our society. And another thing to bounce back on what you were saying about, I'm going to sidestep to something entirely different. I know that was more of an emotive statement, but my internet connection is unstable, so forgive me if
I
mess
missed a
up on
couple words here and there.
Okay, sorry. I'm working on that. We're gonna
I'm
get
trying to
that.
fill in the blanks, but I'm doing okay.
Okay, cool. One of the things that I saw a meme that he posted today. This is in response to getting viewers that we were talking about at the beginning of the session today. Is he said there's three ingredients, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more, but he boiled it down to these three in terms of being successful in that domain, I suppose, getting viewers, if that's, if that's an admirable thing to be successful at. But the first one, he said he focused on the first two, or no, the second two, whatever, and said the first one was what a lot of people focus on, but it's not necessarily the best thing to focus on. He said there's quality, quantity, quantity, and oh shoot, oh man, I was going head straight. That one
And
was,
the other thing.
and the other thing, um, maybe I don't know, quality, quantity, and something else, but he was basically saying a lot of people don't focus on they focus on quality and say, oh, I can never do that. It's going to take me so long to get there. And they don't focus on frequency. And the other thing that was really important, which basically I boiled it down to, since I forget the third part, my brain figured out that the second one was more important, I guess. And then, but is just to put it out there, who you are. I'm just going to put it out there all the time. And so what I was thinking about in terms of like what you were talking about, changing your perspective on how you want to do content and stuff. The question I really wanted to ask you is like, what is your most authentic skill that you love, or most authentic self that you can deliver to the internet, and that you could do it like this as quickly as maybe speed was the third one. I think speed was probably the third one. So like quantity and speed, the speed at which you do things and the amount of things that you do. What's how do we That's why I wanted to do these videos like off the cuff, maybe every day in the morning, and then like the easiest way to chop it up so that I can just deliver it, deliver it, deliver it.
Yeah.
And if it's what we agree with, if it's morally straight and what we want to do, what we think is right, and what we think adds value, then sometimes I feel guilty about wanting to push it out. But if it's adding value, if it's being honest, and if it's giving something with a moral effort, with the idea of correcting when we need to, then I suppose I shouldn't feel guilty about that. But what do you make of that? So sorry, the question of what's your most authentic self, version of yourself, and in terms of delivering that to the world.
That's a really great question. I think it's one of those things that gets answered in the moment.
Hmm.
Um, I have an ability to accept whatever information comes at me, gets inputted, and can just sort of process it and start articulating something about almost anything. I guess it's a lot rooted in my ability to be honest with my level of expertise on any particular subject. That's actually one of the required courses that I had to take, was theory and criticism, where number one, state your bias. You just right out of the gate, if you don't feel as though you have any expertise on a particular subject, you should say that. You should say what you are an expert on, but yet I can engage on that particular topic. And so the thing that I do, though, is I think a lot, and I don't know if I am particularly unique in that fact. Perhaps the rest of the world thinks just as much as I do, but I suspect they don't. I suspect it's something that I enjoy doing, that I like to analyze and think about things and reinterpret those things in different ways, and hypothesize what the meaning of whatever it is, and try to come up with different ways of approaching things and trying to express that sort of thing. But anyways, I've said a lot, so But a really good question you asked. What is the thing I do?
Hmm.
The thing I've done my whole life is just think. I'm one of these people that just like thinks a lot. I think that's attached a lot to my abuse of alcohol and drugs. Like an overactive mind, like it can it can be sometimes daunting how much thought will go through my mind over things that are perhaps not that important
Hmm.
or of little consequence, and yet my mind won't let some things go. So I think, do I have a disorder of some sort? I don't know.
Well,
But
I've.
yeah, I just I dig thinking about things.
Hmm. Well, why don't do you want to try something for the next little while,
Sure.
um, and to continue with again this concept that I've been thinking about, the easiest barrier to entry, and
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I'll make a YouTube video, or we'll just send content to each other, to the public, but to each other. So if I have an idea that I'm thinking about, because I have similar characteristics. I think we probably get it from mom, I guess, because that's the only parent that we share. So that would make sense. But
That would make sense. And
but
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. She does have a bit of uh, an overactive mind like mine. I didn't realize it until I was a lot older,
hmm.
but I was kind of not present for a decade or so, somewhere in there.
You let something else take over, and you weren't there.
I I'm sorry, I was doing drugs. What can I do? And
Yeah.
it's really tempting sometimes to like, man, I could so do that again for a little while. It would be crazy.
Hmm.
But and what's really interesting about it is having had multiple experiences with it. Um, I know that I wouldn't overdo it. Although I do know this, it would fuck me up for a while. Like I could go on a month-long binge and I'd be like a crazy person for the next 6 months. I'd be like, I don't know what happened.
Oh man, I don't know if that's a good idea. Your serotonin receptors might what is it, downregulate your or upregulate your serotonin receptors, and then all of a sudden you're just permanently depressed. Stuff like that.
Oh well, I don't think it would be that bad. But the thing that is really disappointing is government policy surrounding any kind of substance. It's just like everything sucks now. You know,
Here's better
every,
go make it
every
illegal.
well, yeah, every illegal drug you can't trust what it is, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. So it's like, yeah, good luck it being, actual whatever, fill in the blank, LSD, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Is it actually going to be that? No, it's going to be the cheaper ingredients to make it passable and saleable on the market.
Mm.
So
Wow.
that's why well, that's one of the reasons, and there's a massive variety of reasons that I'm like, yeah, this illegal drugs business is not working out.
Yeah.
It's just killing people. That's all it's doing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you're just creating an underground market for selling people poison, and then now it's actually poison. it's like, yeah,
Bath salts. No,
yeah, yeah,
I remember
exactly.
that.
Like you any sort of like cocaine is not cocaine. It's just chopped up with whatever shit that they can find to make it, serve enough of their customers. So that's basically what it is.
Hmm.
So a barrier to entry.
Yeah, sorry, let's go
It's a
back to
low
that.
barrier to entry. I
Oh.
can I can I can buy some rat poison and and some of this, chop them together. Yeah, low barrier.
There's probably YouTube videos of people showing you how to make your own substances with kitchen appliances. I'm sure.
There absolutely is.
Oof,
I've
that's
watched them.
horrifying. Oh my
I'm like,
goodness.
really? I found it? Awesome.
It's all right here. Oh man. Um, no, my youngest is going to wake up soon.
All right.
So I should go. But I'm gonna try something. Instead of because I have this problem with having grandiose ideas, big ideas, and then never being able to execute. I think I said at the beginning. I'm gonna try something different, and I'm going to make instead of having a big idea and not being able to do it, make it the smallest idea that I possibly can, or smallest possible amount of effort that I need to do something, one thing, and I'm going to do it. And I think I'm probably going to start with sending you a YouTube video as soon as we finish here, maybe 30 seconds, just to say, hey, what's up? I really liked this. And then
Hmm.
see what happens.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I can dig how that's gonna help me refocus on something I'm working on. Is I do want to I want things to be better for no particular reason. And I see the data from all the different videos that I have. And sometimes it's the simplest damn video that I make. I'm like, yeah, people like that one. Why? Because it's simple. So I don't go off on a tangent about something else. I just stick to one simple topic. It's like, here, this is what I think. This is why I think it. And that is my conclusion of the video. Thanks for watching. It's been a minute and a half. Goodbye. And sometimes those are quite good. And maybe that is the way to build up a trusting audience that's willing to have the patience to listen to your longer point and eventually be more like this guy, Bo of the Fifth Column. He had an excellent video that went super viral about rights and responsibilities.
Ooh.
Yeah, really good because he talked about, the big two, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment in the States. And he does it in such a beautiful way, talking about that in order to have rights, you need to have responsibilities, and you're responsible to your neighbors. And he weaved it around and came all the way around to the First Amendment, and your right to free speech hinges on your responsibility to educate yourself so that you can understand what other people are talking about. It was like, wow, that's mind blown. I'm like, wow, yeah, your right to free speech is nothing if you're not educated, because then people will take advantage of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyways,
I'll check it out, and then I'll maybe that'll be my next thing. I'll check it out.
okay,
Commentary on it.
cool.
Cool.
All right, I am the East person. My name is Darcy.
And I am the West person, and my name is the Marcus. I'm using Marcus a lot lately.
Okay, bye for you.
Bye bye.